Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here. The show's weekend appointment, and my talk line number is 540-0580. That's 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions. Legal concerns? Got an issue? Just want to, pound the microphone about something? Whatever you got, 540-0580. We'd like to hear what you have to say. And, of course, if you're looking for some free legal advice, this is a good place to get it. Although, obviously, we keep it general. We keep it simple, broad stroke. I don't want the names of your employers. I don't want the name of your horrible neighbor, and I don't want to know all the gory details about why you want to divorce your wife. But what I do want to do is help you with a legal problem if you have one. 540-0580. Also want to remind you to go to weekendappointment.com throughout the week. We have plenty of good questions posted on there. We had somebody on there who was interested in ending a lease because of domestic violence. Curiously, and if somebody knows the answer to this, I'd love for them to call in. I cannot find a statute that specifically addresses that in Pennsylvania. I did find them for other states. That may be somewhere where we're lacking, but it allows you to break a lease because of domestic violence as a defense. In other words, if the landlord sues you and you can prove that you were forced out as, say, a co-tenant, then you might have a defense. I also just want to give folks a little highlight. And I'm going to be putting together a package of information on this. The child support laws are changing. Yes, that's right. They're changing in a fundamental way. Remember, in the past, we've changed the amounts. And again, the talk line number is 540-0580. We've talked about in the past the fundamental amounts have changed. So how much you would owe for this many children, a family that makes this much money has changed. This time, it's going to be a different shift. We are actually going to count up the amount of time that a parent actually has as parenting time and use that to adjust rather than slavishly going by overnights as we always have in the past. So if you're aware of this, right now we look at how many overnights each parent has. So out of a 2-week period, if you have 7 overnights, we consider it 50-50 custody. But in some situations, imagine you pick the kid up from school, you watch the kid all evening, and then you drop the kid off at your spouse's house. Well, we would see them as having 14 out of 14 overnights, even though you did all the parenting from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 o'clock in the evening with the child. And now we're going to actually account for that rather than use the mechanical overnight calculation. In fact, the overnight portion of time, while the kid's asleep, is not going to be considered parenting time. So you're going to need, if you have a child support order, if you're receiving child support or you're paying child support, you would well be served to talk with a lawyer like myself or someone else and find out how this will exactly affect your situation and if there's any steps you need to take to document your, quote, parenting time and how you're going to do that. 540-0580, call in with your legal questions. I will be putting a package together about that new support matter and exactly how the law is going to apply. Now, obviously, because it's a new structure of regulation, we don't have any court decisions on it yet. And I'm certain that this fight over what is parenting time is going to come into play. I mean, is it parenting time, while the kids are sleeping? Well, probably not. Is it parenting time while you're doing homework with them? Probably yes. Is it parenting time when you're in the kitchen cooking dinner and they're in the living room playing Nintendo, or I'm going to date myself there, aren't I? PlayStation 3. So anyhow, major change coming to child support. So if you're thinking about getting a child support order, you have a child support order, you were subject to one, get ready for the changes. 540-0580. Oh, what else did I want to tell you guys? Mike Palermo in my office has been fighting the Twitter matter in the Bonus Gate trial. You might have seen that in the newspaper. He's taking the position, and I think rightly so, that you can't tweet from the courtroom directly because we have a regulation in place that effectively bans cameras, but it bans all other kinds of electronic communications. So we'll wait and see how the courts rule on that. So it is a kind of a cutting-edge issue. And if you want to read a little bit more about it, go to weekendappointment.com. We've got a link there to the article that talks a little bit about it. Of course, everybody wants to talk about it on the air. I'd be happy to just give you an overview of it. 540-0580. What else did I want to tell you guys? I'm just trying to remember here. I had a few things in mind. I think I wanted to let people know if you wanted to hire me, we do have a link on the website, and I did an email on that, and I don't know why that's so hard to find, because if you go to the new redone website, look across the top, you'll see weekend appointment, announcements, get a free will. Remember, you can get a free will at weekendappointment.com. Hire Carl, custody tips, and then we got a section called Arrested, What to Do, where we're throwing some nuggets on the criminal law, and we're going to have a more complete post on what to do when you're actually arrested, although remember, it's always different in a case-by-case basis. Bob, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi there. Hey, listen, I got a little bit of a story. I have a brother that lives in Michigan, and him and his wife got a divorce. He had two naturally born children and one adopted child. The adopted child, custody, she lives with the mother. And because of differences that he had with his ex, he felt it was best that, he paid the support payments but stayed away.
Mm-hmm.
So his ex remarried. And lo and behold, she marries a sex offender.
Yeah.
And he's on the national website as a sex offender. He has a nephew that's a sex offender. And through the craziness of the courts, I mean, he went after the local jurisdiction and everything to get custody of his child.
Right.
And they did not want to bring the matter up. They made a mistake, and there he's stuck. And the guy lives in constant worry about his child,
mm-hmm.
even though she's adopted, but she was adopted at a young age, and he treats her as he treats his naturally born one. And the awful thing is that there's such cover-ups by the courts up there and the family. They kept all that information from him. And it's just very frustrating. And as his elder brother, I can see the pain that he goes through every day.
And this is happening up in Massachusetts or Maine?
No, this is in the state of Michigan.
Michigan. Okay, I'm in the M's. I knew I was in the M's.
Yes.
Yeah, and so his lawyers haven't been able to ban contact with this sex offender.
No, and the amazing thing is he's been paying all these support payments and everything.
Mm.
The guy basically can't get a job because he's a sex offender.
Here in Pennsylvania, let me give you an example. If a parent was charged with certain crimes or convicted of certain crimes, they could still get custody as a sex offender, but the court would automatically require them to go through a lengthy psychiatric evaluation with the court's expert being charged with making sure that they would be safe for the child and what measures would have to be put in place, etc. And we have a whole list of crimes that applies to, including sex offenses, but also other things like aggravated assault.
I think what came into play was a lot of plea bargaining. Obviously, the jails are full, and he's going to be on the national sex offender list for the next 40 years.
Right. But I'm talking about though here. I just want to let you know. I mean, here we'd have to put that person through a system to be certain that they were appropriate to be around the child. I'm not sure that's 100% accurate, but at least we have some tools for that here in Pennsylvania. Now,
it is completely different. I mean, we went over the difference in laws and everything, and here he is. He's pretty much cut out.
Yeah.
He's paying for the support of the sex offender. And it must be something in the family up there because he's got a nephew that.
Well, it does run in families, and the reason it runs in families is people who are the victims of molestation have a much higher chance of going on to do it themselves because obviously you learn inappropriate sexual behaviors when you're molested, and if it's not.
Early on, when he was very unaware of what was happening, but he was prevented even a verbal contact with his daughter.
Yeah. Now, did he aggressively pursue that with a lawyer or no?
Yes, he has, but I believe he's going to try it again. I mean, he took it up. Went to the district attorney and everything. They admitted that they made a mistake, that he should have been notified as the legal father.
Oh, yeah, the criminal courts didn't even know. That's horrible. Bob, I got to go to break here, but thanks for your story.
Yeah, well, this is kind of a warning for all divorced parents out there, and, you got to be careful who your mate hooks up with. And
I sometimes tell people, don't wait for the bad news to come in the mail. You might want to check them out a little bit yourself when you find out who they are.
Go to the National Sex Offender website, put the last name, first name in, the state, and then there it is.
Thank you, Bob. I'll see you after. I'm going to see folks after the break. 540-0580. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here. The show's weekend appointment. They tell me I'm going to be picking a jury in Perry County on Monday morning, but that would be for later in the month for the trial. And then they want me back in Cumberland County to pick a jury on Monday morning. So if you want to stop by the Cumberland County Courthouse Monday morning, late in the morning, you might be able to catch a jury trial. Although often these things settle at the last minute, which is not uncommon. One side or the other flexes. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes we actually have a trial. But my mom came down one time to visit me and she said, I'd really like to see you in trial. And I said, well, Mom, good luck, because we're scheduled to start one tomorrow, which just means it's not going to happen. And sure enough, it didn't happen. She was a little disappointed. I was relieved. Greg, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Yeah, I just heard your last segment on child support.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit.
Well, what they're doing is, and God bless them, I don't think they have it perfect yet, but they're moving it around so that we're not going to just count overnight. So currently, you could watch your kid all day long. You hand them over to the spouse for the overnight, and the court counts up the overnights and says, the overnights are how we calculate who has custody at what percentage for purposes of the support guidelines. Now, a judge can deviate from that, but presumptively, if you have 7 overnights and the other side has 7 overnights, that's an equal split. If you have 6 overnights and they have 8, then they have majority custody. And if you're like the hypothetical person I was talking about, who actually I know because I've represented people who do this, who watch the kids after school every day and only have certain limited number of overnights, they do most of the parenting, yet they're considered to be the non-custodial parent and end up paying support if the other side is greedy or otherwise sticking it to them. So what we're going to do now is add up parenting time, and we're going to exclude, like school is not going to be considered parenting time because neither parent has to do anything when the kid's in school.
Oh, okay.
When the kids are asleep, we're not going to consider it parenting time. We're going to add up and divide parenting time. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have more than 50% of the parenting time that you're going to be able to completely avoid support. And I haven't seen the final guidelines yet, so I don't know exactly how it's going to read. And that's why I need to put this together for everyone, but I want to make sure people know it's time to start that discussion because they're going to take effect here this spring.
Oh, okay. So I should probably get with my attorney.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
if they go, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, say, well, my radio lawyer, my radio lawyer says that there's something coming out, and you should be able to find at least a draft or a version that's been adopted that should be promulgated. I believe it's out. It's just a question of when it actually becomes effective. But like I said before, like everything else in the law, it says one thing, but what courts will ultimately say it means, I don't know.
Oh, okay. I have one other question, if I could.
Yeah.
I guess it's dealing more with the Perry County.
Yeah.
Guy, trying to take care of himself with his own gun.
Well, that was the beer distributor who found somebody breaking into his beer distributorship, went in there, and when the man lunged at him with a hammer, he turned and shot him in self-defense.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I see nothing wrong with that. But anywho, I have the concealed carry.
Yes.
And I like to conceal carry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say I'm coming out of, I don't want to mention any names, but a Quickie Mart,
Right.
whatever it might be. I'm coming out, I see a guy running in there with a mask on, and it looks like he's going to rob the place.
Right.
Do I go back in there and try to protect the owner, or do I just stand there and watch, hey, this guy's robbing, I see he's robbing, he shoots the clerk, I still want to sit here and watch and, tell the police what's going on?
Interesting question. Well, under the theory that that some people were expounding that perhaps, you shouldn't go back in because that could create the danger. However, defense of self and defense of others is different. And so if a gunman comes here to the radio station and I feel like I can retreat, then probably I have a duty to retreat. But if I look through the glass and I see him headed for Shane, I'm entitled to, just like in Independence Day when they shoot the alien through the glass, just, pull the gun and ask the general if it's bulletproof and then shoot away. Because my point is, if I see somebody else in danger, I don't have to retreat. I do have the ability to go to their aid. Now, obviously you got to be right. And the nightmare scenario is that it's the owner's nephew, with a cap gun or a soft air. Who knows? But the point is Well, I guess you don't have to be right. It's just how you reasonably perceive the situation. So you got to, I would say urge some caution. But nonetheless, you're right. You can go in there and defend that person.
Would it be, I guess it's...
When I go to the bank, I always think about that. I always figure someday I'm going to be making a deposit in the bank, and some poor sucker is going to come in here and try to rob one of the tellers at gunpoint, and I'm going to cap him.
Right. I guess the best thing would be to stay outside and wait for, I guess, something to happen.
Yeah, I mean, well, but that's. I mean, how do you quarterback that? And then when he shoots the guy in there, and you go, we all know that when Peter Parker, swore to become Spider-Man, it's because he let the guy go who ultimately went and killed his uncle, right?
Right.
And so, do you want to be that guy, or do you just kind of hedge your bet and kind of walk right in? But then maybe you're going to stir the situation up. Maybe nobody was going to get shot until you came through the door. So I mean, that's life. So I don't know what to tell you. I just need to tell. I just tell you, you do have privilege to defend others if you reasonably perceive that they are in danger of mortal injury or death. Then you can defend them, and you don't have a duty to retreat. So another little caveat here is, now, of course, if you would do that, I would hope you would never speak with the police about it, but instead you would exercise your right to remain silent so that you and I could go over a full and fair exposition of the law as it applies to the unique facts of the circumstance.
Oh, okay.
And before you get bullied into some crazy story.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to know, just because I always had that burning question. I always wanted to call, and I never, I don't know, too busy, whatever.
Understand. No, I understand. And you do have the right to defend others without the duty to retreat, which is why if I was asked, Carl, were you defending yourself? Like, I would say, well, I wanted to defend myself, but I was more worried about the guy standing next to me. See, because then my duty to retreat doesn't exist, and the police can't hassle me about that. However, obviously it's got to be true because we can't lie to the police. And number two is we don't have to talk to the police in those circumstances. So and really, if the officers are sympathetic, they're going to let you get a lawyer. If they're telling you don't need a lawyer, you need 3 lawyers.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yep.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here, the show's weekend appointment. Joanne, you're on.
Hi. I have a quick question. Legally, do you have to tell a dealer if you're trading your car in or selling your car that you had a car accident if it's been repaired?
Well, the answer on that is I don't think you have a duty to disclose to them. Unless they ask you about it, then it would be a fraudulent misrepresentation.
Okay.
I mean, if
so
he looks
they
at
ask you tell the truth.
Yeah, he looks at you and says, tell. But here's the reality. And Shane just put up on the screen, what about Carfax? In other words, they probably already know because they've probably run the VIN if it's got an accident that's mentioned in the title. Now, if your nephew's got a body shop or something, or otherwise it's not a super serious accident, it may not show up. But, the answer at most car dealers, to be honest with you, they're just going to take that car off to auction anyhow.
Okay. Well, PennDOT said that it will show up on your license, but she wasn't sure about the registration.
Gotcha. Yeah, and a license could show a car accident. That's right.
Right.
But
I thought Carfax was registration.
Registration. That's right. And that's so. But if the dealer asks you point blank, I mean, I think you got to be an honest person, and you can't lie to them.
Right. I understand.
And I don't think that's. I mean, to me, that would be A, illegal, but B, it's just not ethical. And I know that all the jokes about the car dealer's probably trying to put it to you anyhow. But the truth of the matter is, I think you would find if they ask you that, they probably already have a reason why they're asking.
Okay.
And I'll give you a little hint. If you ever look at a car and you open up the door to the car and you look on the inside edge of the door, sometimes you can see little dots of paint that'll show you that maybe it's been repainted. Right. And so there's areas that a good car dealer would know to look. And when they ask you a question like that, probably already suspicious or no. So why put yourself in a bad position?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. 540-0580, 540. Hey, just sitting here reading a little In Touch Weekly, learning everything I need to know about what's going on in the land of Hollywood. 540-0580, 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions. Dan, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's your question? Dan.
Yes, Mr. Rominger, I was
trying
to find out why alimony is calculated differently among counties in central Pennsylvania.
Well, it's not calculated differently. You're talking about alimony in a divorce, right?
Yes.
It's not calculated differently, okay? Let me back up, and I'm kind of chuckling because you're right, it is, but it isn't. Every court, and the answer is going to be this. Why is it that if you smoke a small amount of marijuana in Dauphin County, you might get a fine, and you do the same in Cumberland County, you might get a fine or you might get probation? You do the same in Franklin County, and you're definitely going to get probation, and you do it in Perry County, and they give you 2 days because it's all the law of Pennsylvania. And the answer is each court has ability to interpret and apply the law as it sees appropriate within the discretion allowed by the law. And a court that is setting an alimony award is told by statute that they are to consider multiple factors, and they're not allowed to use a mathematical formula. And those factors, those 20-plus factors, include things like fault. They include things like how many assets, marital and non-marital, each party has after the divorce is over, their jobs, dependents, new relationships, tax consequences, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And if somebody really wants me to, post it on weekendappointment.com to ask me to, and I'll post all the factors for you so you can look at them. But here's the deal. So now you've got judges in different counties with different personalities and different county systems with different tolerances being asked to apply factors non-mathematically. Use your linguistics, how much weight to put on each factor, and then set an alimony award. And so is that starting to make sense?
Yes, when I heard about this, I just thought there was an issue of equal protection.
Well, and it should be, how come it is in criminal law that in one county they can prosecute the heck out of it? I'll give you a great example. Perry County traditionally has not had ARD for misdemeanors. So if you're a 19-year-old student who commits a criminal mischief, in Perry County you get a permanent record because they traditionally have not given you ARD. In Dauphin, Cumberland, Lebanon, and most counties, we look at that 19-year-old and we say, he did something stupid, but we're going to give him a second chance. We're going to put him on probation, but we're not going to give him a criminal record. Doesn't violate equal protection because it's discretionary with the district attorney whether to let you into ARD in that county or not. And same with this, which is that you're getting the same process everybody else is getting, although you're right, the personalities that decide it aren't going to be exactly the same, so the result's not going to be exactly the same.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, man. Yeah, and that's it, folks. The law is different everywhere, and I'll and maybe you should know this, and maybe you don't know this. The law at the federal level is also different everywhere. What do I mean by that? Well, if the Third Circuit decides a case, which we're in the Third Circuit, it's not binding on anybody else in a different circuit. It might be persuasive, it might be interesting to those judges, but it's when we get splits in the circuits, when the circuits go in opposite directions, that the Supreme Court usually intervenes and says this is the way it should be. In fact, the split in the circuit is the best way to get to the Supreme Court many times because the courts want to resolve it so that there's some more uniform law, but sometimes they don't. And so they have different, depending on what area of the United States you're in, how the Constitution might be applied may be different, because the circuits are not agreeing on exactly how extensive or non-extensive a right is. And another great example of that, I had a case in county court I can think of not too long ago where Cumberland County had decided an issue and said, yes, you have the right to a jury trial for this kind of civil suit. Dauphin County had not. And in fact, in Dauphin County, I would be in danger of getting what's called summary judgment, where a judge could have said, well, we're going to decide that you're not entitled to a trial for this issue. So I figured out how to get it filed in Cumberland County, where I knew the law was on my side, so to speak, or at least such that the defendant couldn't weasel out of a jury trial, therefore making a settlement much more likely. So yes, all the counties apply the law differently, and sometimes a clever lawyer or litigant can use that to their advantage, and sometimes it's not to your advantage and there's nothing you can do about it. 540-0580, 540-0580 is my talk line number. I want to remind you to sign up for weekendappointment.com. If you haven't already, you can get a free will there. Just did a few of those last week. Met with some folks. We did the wills, had a great time. What else did I do? Well, I did a couple wills, did a few other things for some listeners, but the wills are something I really like to do, and they're free. So if you register at weekendappointment.com, you'll find that you can easily download a form and send it in, and you'll meet with me, and we'll actually do a real live will. Sammy, you're on WHP 580.
Yes, Mr. Rominger, did you see the ABC show last night on television about this dental chain that committed fraud?
No, I did not.
Okay, well, this particular dental chain was taking Medicare and Medicaid patients, and as an example, one of the crimes they committed was had a 4-year-old where they gave him 16 root canals and other things that they did. They did other little kids.
On the baby teeth.
Hello?
On the baby teeth.
What's that?
Root canals on the baby teeth.
Yeah, root canals on baby teeth. There you go. And now the end of the story is they got a fine of $20 million. From what I can tell, they must have stole $50 or $100 million from the Medicare and Medicaid program from malpractice cases.
Well, that's why.
Why didn't they go to jail?
Well, I can't tell you why the prosecutors chose not to prosecute them, or maybe they agreed to pay a fine but didn't agree to wrongdoing. I can't tell you that, but that's always discretionary with the government.
Now the baby teeth is not.
I understand, Sammy. I really do. Dennis, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I'm curious, whenever, if you get stopped or whatever, any situation where the police ask for your driver's license and date of birth and all that, and start asking you questions, are you obligated? I mean, what is your obligations? What must you give them? What must you tell them?
Okay, well, let's start with anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And that's a warning that the Supreme Court in the 1960s wanted to make sure that everybody who's been talking with the police knew. And that applies to any conversations with the police or any government actor for that matter. District attorneys, FBI, U.S. attorneys, DEA, local police, state police, constables. Doesn't really matter. Whenever you're speaking with a government actor, you have to remember that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Now, what can you not say? And people always say to me, oh, come on. I mean, you had to talk. I had to talk to him. Or I just had somebody in my office the other day. Well, what do you mean I don't have to talk to the police? I thought I had to answer his questions.
Right, I did too.
No, it's America. You have no duty to answer any question from the police officer. And so someday I'm going to be able to post a video. I'm in the process of securing it where I was pulled over by the police and they were questioning me. And you'll hear the appropriate responses that you can make and to which they can do nothing about, which is I'm going to decline to answer that question. And interestingly, you'll see how they tried to trick me into answering that question because at that point they didn't know I was a lawyer. So I had a little fun with them. But that said, no, you should give your name, rank, and serial number. You should cooperate with any commands of the police officer, except the command to answer his question. And my favorite one is, if you don't answer my questions, I'm going to take you to jail, and you're going to spend a night in jail. And you're going to stay in jail until you answer my questions.
Right. So it's not illegal for him to lie to you, but it's illegal for you to lie to him?
You ready? Here. Listen, folks. Here it is. Lying to a police officer is a crime. Mm-hmm. And it's also possibly consciousness of guilt that the jury can infer that you lied to the police officer to hide your guilty heart. Mm-hmm. But if the police officer lies to you, it is a good, sound interrogation technique. And so, here's a classic example. You and your wife are engaged in some kind of crime. Maybe you're not going to tell anybody who was driving because one of you doesn't have a license. Not seen that case before. Maybe you've committed a fraud, shame on you, but nonetheless, you're in your separate interrogation rooms, and the officer walks in and says, hey, we know you did it because, your wife confessed, but you want to go easy. He can lie about that. He can lie about whether you're physical evidence. We found your DNA. We found your DNA at this crime scene, so you might as well just tell the truth and say you did it. Hey, you don't have any DNA. And you'd be amazed. Now, some people say, hey, well, if the guy's guilty, that's great. Problem is, sometimes that also causes innocent people to say they're guilty because, believe it or not, some people can be bullied into it. And there's a great video of a kid, and I say kid, he's in his 20s, being told that he had killed somebody. And he denied it, and he denied it, and he denied it. And about 4 hours later, he was signing a confession for killing somebody. And later, of course, they found the real killer, and there was some other video evidence that showed who the real killer was, so you knew it was a completely false confession. And in the state of California, where they allow some other things into evidence than we do here, because I couldn't show that video to a jury here in Pennsylvania, in California, some defense attorneys actually bring in experts to show how a false confession can be achieved very simply. Because people think, that's impossible. Nobody would ever confess to something they didn't do. Well, no, they do, and there's psychologists can explain it, particularly if the person had, like this kid did, a little uncertainty about his evening before because he'd been partying it up, so he wasn't exactly, is it possible you blacked out? Well, I have blacked out before from drinking. Right. I don't think I did last night. Well, you wouldn't know if you blacked out, right? No, I guess I wouldn't know if I had a blackout, would I? Because I wouldn't remember it.
Yep, I talk you into it.
All right, I got to go to break here.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome back, 540-0580. Carl Rummager, Lion Tamer Extraordinaire. Jeff, you're on WHP 580.
Yeah, how you doing? I got a sort of a hypothetical question for you.
Okay.
And it involves this whole questioning and what you have to say and what you don't say.
Okay.
And it also involves what you were talking about a couple of weeks ago about screenings going onto an airplane.
Right.
If, let's say the government had a machine that said, automatically asked you a couple questions, and based on a facial lie detector, it said you either get enhanced screening or don't get enhanced screening.
Right.
And one of the questions it asks do you intend to hurt people on the plane?
Right.
And you come up with this answer, I decline to answer.
Yeah.
And based on that, the machine says go to the right, and somebody does a whole frisking of the person and finds out he has an explosive on him. Is that going to be admissible?
It will be. The answer is you don't have a duty to answer that. You're not in a custodial detention. I understand they kind of got you by what we call the short hairs because you're trying to get on the plane and get somewhere, and what are you going to do?
Right.
But the flip side is you don't have to. And so that's always one of the critical junctures is, I'll give you an example. If the police officer is walking down the street and he says, "Hi, how are you?" and you say, "Good, how are you?" He says, "Fine weather." And you say, "Yeah, it's good weather." "Do you have any drugs on you?" "Yes." That's admissible because you didn't have to answer that, and it was a non-coercive, non-custodial detention.
Right, but I'm asking if for some reason you say I decline to answer.
Yeah, well, the declination.
And they say based on that we do an enhanced screening of the person.
Right, and that's different. But see that in the enhanced screening of the person has to do with security to get on the airplane. And remember, air travel is not a federal. You always remember that your rights are different vis-a-vis governments. You have the right to refuse government's answer or question. But on the other hand, if the airline says before we're going to let you on, as a condition of flying on our plane,
this is the TSA.
I understand that, and they administrate that. That's the little rub in this whole thing. But they would basically say we're just doing this on behalf of the airplane security.
Well, I'm not. I'm just
Yeah, I just
this whole thing. It's questioning, and what you don't have to answer.
Now,
and I'm just saying, based on not answering, if they. Can they,
Well, you haven't. Yeah. If you invoke your right to remain silent, they're going to say one consequence of that is we're going to do an enhanced screening on you, and by invoking your right, you trigger an additional physical test. Which I understand what you're saying is, generally speaking, declining to answer should not work into probable cause to arrest. Here, it's just a question of entry. In other words, you have to answer these questions to gain entry to this facility.
Right.
And failure to answer, but you should still be able to decline to answer and then also decline to go through the screening. That would probably be the critical issue. In other words, once you invoked your right to silence, you should be free to turn and leave. If you're not, then we probably have a custodial detention, and that statement can't really be used against you.
I'm just curious about that and all.
And thanks for bringing up the screening, by the way, because I want to tell you about something very interesting. They're talking about all these, these pat downs and then these enhanced screenings and everything. And I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about it, and basically they say it isn't going to make a hoot of difference because anybody who wants to carry anything on an airplane just has to put it in a body cavity. And the body cavity on a male or a female is sufficient to hold enough explosives to take down a plane. So if you're going to make scanners, what they're going to do is they'll wait till we've spent $2 billion installing scanners in all the airports, which only look under the clothes. Then the next guy to blow up a plane will try to blow up a plane will have the explosives inside a body cavity, and then we're going to have to go to full body scans. And they're saying that the amount of radiation that you're probably going to get exposed to in order to have that kind of full body scan is going to be bad for your health.
But I'm just saying, if a machine basically says, are you, by questioning, like basically a facial lie detector.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm saying, and, this is saying what your intent is. So it's a different type of scanner or security check than... I
understand. I understand exactly what you're saying. I think it's not a bad idea. The flip side is, again, you got to be able to be free to decline and leave if you want. You just can't answer the wrong question and be in trouble. But of course, by submitting, you might pre-agree. You might agree by stepping into this booth. I agree that should I be found to be deceptive.
I'm just giving this. You're bringing up this whole question of what you can decline and what you can not decline. And in this whole question of who has rights, that they're bringing up.
Well, you also bring up an interesting point too, which is, you talk about your right to decline. I want to remind people that you also don't have to decline. So let me give you a great example. You're pulled over by the police. Do you know why I pulled you over? Yes, my tail light is out. That's a confession. It's a confession to improper equipment. But on the flip side is the fact that you're aware of it. The officers say, "Oh, well, when were you going to get that fixed?" And you say, "Well, I just noticed it yesterday, and in fact, I got an appointment with my mechanic on Wednesday." And there's by exercising your rights, you might have escalated the situation rather than just had the officer say, "Well, let me give you a warning so that you can take it to the repair shop with you, and I get it back, and my boss feels like I did something."
Right. Well, I was just bringing up.
No, Jeff, I got you. I'm using it as a jumping off point, my friend.
Right, and it's just like, and then who has the rights based on, are you an American citizen or not an American citizen?
Well, theoretically, here on American soil, we confer to all visitors the equal protection of law that we enjoy. So as a general rule, we give everybody on American soil the same rights as if they were a citizen for those purposes.
Unless you're a soldier not uniformed soldier of a foreign country that is at war with the United States.
Right. Yeah, except that, well, we can debate that one forever because, there is definitions of what a non-uniformed soldier of a country is, and whether or not we've consistently applied that definition and other countries have consistently applied that definition has been a source of litigation forever.
Right, but I'm just...
I understand.
Okay.
And we do send non-uniformed soldiers to other countries, too. They're called the Special Forces.
Right. Well, this is non-identified, non-uniformed soldier of a foreign country at war with the United States.
Right. Well, and then they wouldn't have similar rights, so it wouldn't really matter. They probably just gas them in the booth.
You're bringing up this whole question of identity and what you have a right to answer, and I was just giving you another example.
Yeah. And
thanks for your time.
All right. And folks, that's right. You don't have to answer. But in that scenario, he's got an interesting question. 540-0580. I want to make sure that during the week, to go to weekendappointment.com, to get the free will and be registered as a user because we do give regular giveaways, and I want to make sure you're eligible for those. I'd hate to find out that I didn't get to send you a $50 gift certificate because you refused to register, and it's free. So you go to weekendappointment.com, and of course, if you're a new listener, I really want you to check out the website and see how useful it is. If you're an old listener and you haven't been there in a long time, it's really changed. Weekendappointment.com. I'll see you folks next week. Remember, weekendappointment.com.